Okay, we are in part 2 of the series of Perkei Avos. Yesterday we learned the introduction of the Chachamim that they put in ahead of the time before Perkei Avos starts. And today we're in Perkei Avos part 1, which is going to be the introduction of Perkei Avos itself. We're going to be doing the introduction of Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai, Masra Yoshua v'Yoshua leZkenim u'Zkenim leNeviim u'Neviim Masra la'Anshei Knesset HaGadola. That introduction, which is actually part of Perkei Avos. And we're going to ask 4 questions on that section and build a mahalach as far as the Perkei Avos' own introduction to Perkei Avos. So the question number 1 is, this Mesorah that we're teaching at the beginning of Perkei Avos really has nothing to do with Perkei Avos. Nowhere in this introduction is it speaking about midas. In fact, it would probably be more appropriate that this introduction would be at the beginning of brachos, at the beginning of all of Perkei Avos, at the beginning of all of the Mishnayos. Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai is the beginning of the Mesorah. Just teach the beginning of the Mesorah at the beginning of Mishnayos. Let it be taught there. So question number 1, why did the Chachamim establish this Mesorah being taught specifically here in Perkei Avos? What is the relevance of it being taught here in Perkei Avos? What message is it teaching us? Why it is a necessary introduction specifically here in Perkei Avos? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is a diuk in the language. Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai u'Masra Yoshua. Now Moshe did not receive Torah Misinai. There's 2 other ways it could have been written, which both would be more accurate. This way is not so accurate. It could have been written Moshe Kibel Torah mi HaKadosh Baruch Hu u'Masra Yoshua. That would have been accurate. Or if you want to speak about the place where he received the Torah, it could have written Moshe Kibel Torah B'Sinai, on Mount Sinai, Al Har Sinai. But to say Moshe Kibel Torah Mi Sinai implies that it was Sinai giving Moshe the Torah. That's not so accurate. So question number 2, the language of the Mishnah, why does it say Moshe Kibel Torah Mi Sinai? Question number 3, also a diuk in the Mishnah. What is the word that the Mishnah is using for handing over, transferring? It has 3 different options, and it changes back and forth. Why does it not keep the same theme all the way through? So first time it says, Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. The second time it says, Masra leYoshua. The third time and the fourth time it doesn't say anything. Yoshua leZkenim, v'Zkenim leNeviim. And then on the 5th time, it jumps back and it says, v'Neviim Masarua la'Anshei Knesset HaGadola. So time number 1, Kibel. Time number 2 and 5, Masru, and time number 3 and 4, it doesn't say anything. It just says, Yoshua leZkenim v'Zkenim leNeviim. Why the change of language? What does the word Kibel represent? What does the word Masra represent? Why does it leave out sometimes? That's question number 3. There's obviously a different type of transferring that's happening each stage, and therefore it's using a different language. What is the nuance in that language? And the final question number 4, which is all, again, going back to the broad understanding of what this is doing over here, is why does Perkei Avos start specifically at this time with the end of the Anshei Knesset HaGadola and with Shimon HaTzadik? It could have started earlier. It could have started with Ezra and Nehemiah, Baruch, Neriah, Yirmiyah. It could have started in the middle of the period of the Nevi'im. It could have started later with the Nesiim, a generation or 2 later. Why specifically over here? If there's Musa that we need to learn, and we're looking towards our Gedolim, our Mesorah, our ancestors to teach us that Musar, then why did it choose specifically this area? Skip all of Zkenim, skip all of the Nevi'im, skip most of Anshei Knesset HaGadola, just at the end, a couple of 3 things, and then we're going one by one. Why specifically in this generation did we make that change? So those are the 4 questions. So let's start going, I'll say that. When you learn Perkei Avos, in theory, you could have a mistaken understanding of what Perkei Avos is and see it as something very universal. Perkei Avos is different to other areas. When you learn other areas, you learn Hilchos Brachos, you learn Hilchos Nezikin, it's very clear to you that it's halacha. It's very clear to you that it's the word of Hashem, which comes through a Mesorah. It comes from Moshe Rabbeinu through the generations, and it's taught using halachic tools. When you read Perkei Avos, you don't get that same sense that what you're learning here is Devar Hashem. What you're learning here is Halach. You get the sense here of learning something which makes you a good person, a decent person, a yashar person. If you learn Perkei Avos, it's the way to perfect your character traits, and that's a universally virtuous path to take. Chachamim wanted to introduce Perkei Avos with a very specific, unique introduction, that we, when we start learning Perkei Avos, won't miss the mark. Because whenever you work on something, you have to ask yourself, where is this taking me? When I'm learning this, what am I going to get out of it? Where's it going to bring me to? And if your vision is mistaken, you'll make a big mistake. And you will end up in the wrong place. Mashallah mahadavadome. There was an elderly person who didn't have contact with his kids. So they bought him a cell phone. And they said, this cell phone will enable us to be in touch. So the kids are very happy. Now they'll be able to be in touch with their elderly parent who doesn't really know how to work these things. So, and they put on the screensaver a picture of the family. So that he'll look at it, he'll see the family. So they give him the phone, and they're ringing, and he's not answering. And they come to visit him, and they say, what's happening? And he says, thank you so much, I appreciate it. This picture that you gave me of the family, I look at this picture all the time, and I feel really connected. I feel like I'm with the family, I feel connected. And they say, that's not why we gave it to you. And he said, what do you mean? You gave it to me to be connected. And that's the picture that you gave me on this little device, this thick kind of picture that you gave me here. Thank you, I feel connected. I say, no, Abba. It's not just a picture. You can actually talk. You can connect through it. What? A picture? You can connect a picture? And they phoned it and they showed him how to answer and he speaks. This is amazing. We can actually connect live. It's not just an old picture that I'm connected to a previous. When you learn Perkei Avos, if you understand Perkei Avos to be a vision of a well-behaved individual, someone who has values and ethics, when you come to learn Perkei Avos, it will connect you to those ethics. It's like a static picture that you're looking at and you're saying, wow, that's a good way of behaving. I'm connecting to that. However, if you understand that this is not just a picture, but this is an actual live connection, and that when you're learning Perkei Avos, just like when you learn halacha, it's clear to you what you're learning is Devar Hashem. So too, when you're learning Perkei Avos and you're learning the Musar of Chazal, it's clear to you that you're learning the Devar Hashem, and that you're building a live connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ish mepi ish. This idea comes back all the way from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The mistaken way of understanding it, the wrong way of learning it would be to say, if I learn Perkei Avos, it will make me an ethical individual. The correct way of learning it is when I'm learning Perkei Avos, I'm hearing Hashem's advice on how to connect back to Mount Sinai and hear the Devar Hashem coming in me. And therefore, not at the beginning of Brachos and not at the beginning of Nezikin, but specifically the beginning of Perkei Avos, which you could mistakenly understand to be just nice ethical messages. Here it has the Masorah. So when you're learning these ethics, these Musar, you're learning and you're recognizing this is Devar Hashem speaking to me throughout all the traditions. That's the Meiri's interpretation of why it's written here, and also in a subtle way, Rav Avadia about to know. And that brings us to the next question. Why does it use the language of the word Kibel by Moshe? And once we understand, you want to put yourself on mute there? Once, whoever can put themselves on mute, Tavo Alechem Bracha. Thank you. Moshe Kibel Torah. Why Kibel by Moshe? Why Masra by Yoshua? And this is phenomenal. And now we're going to learn together the Ruach Chaim of Chaim Velozhin. And to give an introduction to this, he explains who was Moshe Rabbeinu. And he uses a contrast of Moshe compared to Abraham. And with that contrast, he gives a deeper understanding who Moshe was and why he uses the word Kibel by Moshe. It's an interesting point. Twice in the Torah, it says someone's name, twice. By Abraham, by the Akedah, and it says Moshe, by the Sneh. And the Zohar and Shmos, this is all from the Ruach Chaim. The Zohar and Shmos points out that by Avram, in the Masorah we have a psik in between them. Avraham, pause, Avraham. But by Moshe, it says Moshe, Merchat Ibcha. You read it as one section, Moshe. And the Zohar asks, what's the connection? What's the difference between them? Why by Avram is there a pause? Avraham. But by Moshe, there's Moshe. Goes together, the two names. And before we answer that question, there's a Gemara in Chulin that says, how do we know that Abraham was humble? Because it says, Anochi afar ve'efer. And how do we know that Moshe was humble? Because it says, V'nachnu ma. And what's the difference? Which is a better one between the two? Which is a better value? So it says the Ruach Chaim, it says the Gemara, that Moshe was higher, and it explains the Ruach Chaim why. When it says someone's name twice, Al Pi Kabbalah, it's speaking about the higher Abraham in the world of Neshamas and the lower Abraham in this world. The higher Moshe in the world of Neshamas and the lower Moshe in this world. The natural way for most people is there's a break between the two. Abraham. There's Abraham in the higher world and there's Abraham in this world. He sees himself in this world as an entity. And that's why it says, Anochi afar ve'efer. Meaning that even though it's an expression of humility, there's still a sense of self. Anochi, I exist here in this world. And that word Anochi creates a separation between the higher Abraham and the lower Abraham. Anochi afar ve'efer. I'm humble. My recognition of my sense of self in this world is of someone who's humble. There's still a recognition of myself in this world. Whereas Moshe Rabbeinu, Nachnu ma. There's no Anochi there spoken. He wasn't even using himself. He wasn't speaking on himself. And even if he was mentioning himself with other people, ma, what is it? Moshe. Moshe didn't have a break between his higher sense of self, his neshama's higher self, and himself in this world. Moshe. So when Moshe was coming to receive the Torah, there was no sense of self getting in the way. It was Moshe Rabbeinu making himself an entire kli kibul. He was totally receiving Hashem's world without any interface of him getting in the way. And that's what Rashi says in Parshas Matos, that the other Nevi'im would say Nevuah with the word Ko Amar Hashem. But Moshe would say Zeh Devar. This is the word of Hashem. By Moshe, there was no him getting involved. It was just the word of Hashem directly being spoken. And that's the language of Kibbul. A total Kibbul. When you have a shiur taking place and someone is speaking and there are many people listening to the shiur, then everyone hears the word with their own lens, with their own reflection, with their own thoughts, with their own perception. There's words being given over, but the words are being received in a way which is going through an interface of the one hearing them. There's a person hearing, there's someone receiving. And if you ask all those people afterwards, what did he say? They'll give you different answers because they each heard it through the reflection of themselves. With Moshe Rabbeinu, there was no sense of self. He was the Makabel Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one Makabel Torah. And therefore, by Moshe, it uses the word Kibel. No one else does use the word Kibel. Because everyone else, when they receive it through their lens, how they're able to interpret, how they're able to hear. And that's also why it says, Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai, Al Pi Drash. Because where did Moshe Rabbeinu get the courage from to receive the Torah? Because if you think about it, at the snare, at the burning bush, Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't so keen. He was saying, Mi Anochi, who am I? I'm not worthy. But when Hashem told him, go receive the Torah, you are going to be the one to bring down the Torah from Mount Sinai. Then suddenly Moshe Rabbeinu has no qualms. He just goes. How come now Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't say, Mi Anochi, how can I receive the Torah? But rather, Moshe Rabbeinu learned this message from Mount Sinai. When Hashem was coming to give the Torah on different mountains, Har Carmel, Har Tavor were much taller. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, if you wish to receive Torah, there is a prerequisite. And this is our main introduction to Perkei Avos. If you wish to receive Torah, the prerequisite is humility. If a person isn't opening themselves up as a kli kibul, they will get in the way and the Torah won't be received. The prerequisite of receiving Torah is humility. Moshe Rabbeinu needed to hear that message in order to go and receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. When he saw that Hashem chose Mount Sinai to be the mountain on which Hashem was giving the Torah, then Moshe Rabbeinu realized, I may not be so great, but that is a milah. The humility that I have is a milah. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the Torah to be given not specifically through the one who's the most great. It could be that, as Moshe Rabbeinu said in last week's parasha, the Nadav and Avihu were greater than Moshe. Maybe they were greater in Torah than Moshe, possibly. But when it came to humility, he knew he was great. He knew he was more humble. And therefore, Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu was able to receive the Torah in the merit of the message that he learned from Mount Sinai. When he saw that Hashem was giving the Torah on Mount Sinai, he saw the prerequisite of receiving Torah as humility. He said, I'll go do it. Once he saw that he was humble, he was able to go receive the Torah. And you may ask yourself, but how can you be humble? How can a person who knows they're so great, he knows he's the only one who sees Hashem and speaks to Hashem pale pale. He knows he's the greatest. How could he be humble? How could he say, I'm the most humble, I'll go? When you think about it deeply, and this is from the Tzivot Shalom, when you think of it deeply, Dafka, someone who's not humble asks that question. When someone is extremely humble, they don't have that question. When a person doesn't have a real awareness of Hashem, then they debate, am I humble? Am I not humble? I'll work on my humility. But when they see Hashem, and they recognize Hashem on a deep level, and they know where their place is in respect to Hashem, they recognize deeply that everything they have only emanates from Hashem. It's not a question of, is it me? I'll try and recognize that this is not me, it comes from Hashem. They don't have that debate. It's clear to them that everything they have emanates from Hashem. And therefore, maybe they know that they are aware of that point more than other people. But who cares? They're not comparing themselves to other people. Humble people aren't comparing. Arrogant people are comparing. Humble people are only looking at Hashem and recognizing everything I have emanates from Hashem. So Moshe was on the level of Kabbalah. He was not someone where he was getting in the way. We once gave a mashal for this. That imagine if you're in a dark room and you open the door to look, you're opening the door to look in a dark room. You're standing in a room which is full of light, and you're opening the door to a dark room and you want to see what's inside. Now, if you open the door and you stand in the way, then no light's going to go in because you're blocking the light. So you say, there's no light in this room, I can't see anything. Someone says, so move out of the way. And you go, what do you mean move out of the way? I won't be able to see. They go, no, because you're standing in the way. That's why you can't see. All the light's coming from behind you. Once you move out of the way, you'll be able to see. So you open the door and you step to the side and then you look. And now all the light is able to come in and you're able to see. HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world is shining his light. And when a person feels, I am the one bringing that light in, then he gets in the way of the light, and the light's not able to transfer. Moshe Rabbeinu's ma'alah, his value was, his greatness was, that he recognized there was no sense of self getting in the way. He was able to say Devar Hashem. He was able to be the one to makabel Torah. The next generation, and no generation, reached his level of that. And therefore the next generation is Masrua. Handed it over to Yoshua. It's a change of level. No longer the same level. The word Masrua represents that we're handing over Torah from one level to a different level. It's Masar, it's transferred to a different level. Yoshua and everyone else post Yoshua, they view the Torah through their perception. And there's room for that. Hu Haya Omer. The rest of Perkei Avos is Hu Haya Omer. The Nevi'im is Ko Amar Hashem to their interpretation. Moshe was on a different level. That's a language of Kabbalah. Now, Yoshua to the Zakenim, the Zakenim to the Nevi'im, that's not a different level. They were all on the same level. And therefore there, it doesn't say that it transfers in a different way. Moshe Kibel Torah, that's the level of absolute Kabbalah, absolute humility, receiving Devar Hashem directly. Masral Yoshua, it's a lowering of a level. It's no longer Devar Hashem directly. It's our interpretation of Devar Hashem. And then Yoshua, the Zakenim and Nevi'im, they were all on the level, the same level of Nevi'im. And therefore it didn't go down a level. And then comes the Nevi'im Masrua la'anshei Knesset HaGadola. And this brings us to our last question that we asked. Why does it use the language here of Masrua? we understood the word Masura means it's another change of level. It's going down a level. And this is going to also answer our fourth question of why does Perkei Avos start specifically here, specifically at this point in history? You have to understand something very great. Until this point in history, whenever the Jews had a question, they would directly ask, what is the Devar Hashem? What does Hashem say? Until then, they would go to the Urim V'Tumim, or they would go to the Navi, and they would directly hear the word of Hashem. In this generation, with the Anshe Knesset Gedolah leaving, Devar Hashem ended. And at this point, the Jews are abandoned. They're calling up HaKadosh Baruch Hu and there's no answer. And Hashem is saying to them, I've given you instruction for 2,000 years. 2,000 years since the giving of the Torah until this point of what Devar Hashem is. Now you're going alone. And the Jews at this point feel, what are we going to do now? We have no idea what Devar Hashem is. And here, at this point in history, comes the Masorah to teach us a lesson. Devar Hashem continues, but in a different form. The essence has not changed, but the form has changed. Until now, when we wanted to know Devar Hashem, the Navi told us directly. From this point on, we look to our Chachamim. And in the words of the Chachamim comes out Devar Hashem. It's still the word of Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's word now comes through us, through our thought, through our logic. Now, back to the point number one. Don't think this is just general, universal logic. This is the logic of Hashem. But the logic of Hashem coming through our logic. And this point in history was a turning point. It's as if in this point in history, HaKadosh Baruch Hu handed the Torah over to us. And he says, but don't use your logic. Don't get in the way. Don't say Anochi. But rather recognize that everything you're bringing out is Devar Hashem. It's still Ish Mepi Ish from Mount Sinai. It's still a Devar Hashem from Mount Sinai. But now Mount Sinai is in you. Now you, with your logic, can bring out Mount Sinai. And here's why we need the instruction. If you're going to be learning Perkei Avos, and you're going to be thinking, that makes sense to me, that's very logical to me, I thought of this idea, I think this is ethical, I think this is a good way to behave, and you're not guaranteed you're bringing out Devar Hashem. But if you're coming to learn the Musarim of Perkei Avos, then the Chachamim are giving you a prerequisite that you need to know. Humility. If you can make yourself humble and recognize that any ideas that are coming out are Hashem's ideas. These ideas are ideas which, if you're not getting your arrogance in the way, and if you don't have any agendas that you want to put on anybody, you're just being authentic and looking for truth and looking in your inner world and interpreting the words of the Torah as true as you can to the Masorah and saying, does this make sense to me? Does this resound with me? But not because I have an agenda that I want to put on, but because I'm trying to cleanse myself and hear the Devar Hashem coming through you. At this point in history, it was no longer go to the Nevi'im and hear what the Nevi'im have to say, and there you know. Now the Torah comes within us. The Mount Sinai is within the Jews. So let's go through the 4 questions that we asked and get an understanding of why this is the introduction. Question number 1 that we asked, using the answer of the Meiri and Rav Vadia Bar Tanura, was, why specifically is Perkei Avos granted this introduction? And now we're getting a clear understanding. When we're trying to get an introduction of what Perkei Avos is, it's hearing the Devar Hashem of how to behave in this world and what mindset and perspective to have in this world. In order for you to hear the Devar Hashem, you have to recognize this Devar Hashem is emanating from Mount Sinai. It's emanating from the Masorah. It's not new ideas that happen to come upon your thought that you're making up from your whim at any point in history. This is a Devar Hashem Masorah Midor Dor. And if you're asking, why does it say the word Mi Sinai? Because that's the message. Moshe Rabbeinu learned this message of how to receive Torah, Mi Sinai, from Mount Sinai. Hashem desires to give the Torah through those who are humble, to those who don't have agendas, to those who aren't putting themselves in the way that you can't see the light anymore. Hashem, like Mount Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu learned that message. Moshe Kibel Torah Mi Sinai, from the message of Mount Sinai. that if you wish to receive the message of Hashem, the Musar Hashem, the Devar Hashem, the ethics of Hashem, if you wish to receive that, you have to learn that message from being humble on Mount Sinai. And that gives the understanding of the word Kabbalah by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe kibel Torah Sinai because Moshe was so humble that there was no ego, there was nothing getting in the way. There was pure Devar Hashem coming down. And that word is only relevant to Moshe. The Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu was on a different level of the Nevuah of all the other Nevi'im. He was the only one who was able to hear directly Devar Hashem. After that, Yeshua went down a level. Masrua, it was transferred over. That went for generations as long as it was the period of the Nevi'im. And then when the Nevi'im ended, a new stage came, which some people look at as a lower level. We dropped it. We don't have Devar Hashem anymore. But there's a way of understanding it that's even a higher level. Mount Sinai came into us. We are now able to bring out Devar Hashem. And that brings us to the fourth question. Why does the Perkei Avos start at this point in history? Because at this point of history is where Mount Sinai entered us. And if a person begins Perkei Avos with the understanding that it's nice ideas, he'll miss his end goal of reaching Hashem. He'll have his cell phone with a picture of the family, and he'll say, what a beautiful picture. It is only seeing the surface value. But if a person begins learning Perkei Avos, and he's saying, when I hear the words of these Chachamim, these words of these Chachamim who had humility is bringing down Devar Hashem. This is a Masorah Ish B'Ish from Mount Sinai. I'm hearing how HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to act. And therefore, it's not just a superficial, cute, nice, ethical way of behaving, but rather this is giving me the insight of how to feel closest to Hashem. This humility, perspective, I'm opening myself up to hear the Devar Hashem, will enable me not only to reach the Torah on a surface level, but it will enable me to use Torah to access the deeper connection, to be able to phone the family and connect all the way back to hearing Devar Hashem within myself and connecting to that pure, authentic Devar Hashem that comes through me, not because I'm getting in the way, but because I'm stepping aside and authentically hearing the Devar Hashem. So that is a very pure introduction which Chachamim wish to give to Perkei Avos, that we will have the proper perspective, the perspective of humility. With that perspective of not getting in the way, but hearing Mount Sinai speaking through me, we can now begin hearing what the Chachamim have to say. And Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach, tomorrow we'll start with the theme of the Anshe Knesset Gedolah.